At voting locations across the country, safety concerns are top of mind. The Brennan Center for Justice reports that 92% of election officials have taken steps to increase election security for voters, election workers, and election infrastructure since 2020. 38% of election workers have reported incidents of harassment, threats, or abuse. 54% are concerned about the safety of their colleagues. Here to talk about some of the ongoing work is Carol Rose. She's Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts. Carol, thank you for being here.
It's wonderful.
This really has been a contentious campaign season, and signs are pointing to a very heated atmosphere on Election Day. So one of the first steps of the Massachusetts election Election Action Plan, let me make sure I got it right, is to monitor and protect the polls. So explain that part of the plan.
Absolutely. So the ACLU is a nationwide membership organization. Actually, the first state affiliate was in Massachusetts, but now we have offices in all 50 states. And ensuring that people are able to exercise their right to vote with free and fair elections and that their votes are counted is really core to the work of the ACLU. So here in Massachusetts, we've put together an election action plan. It's not just a concept of a plan, it's an actual plan. We've been working on it, oh gosh, now for a little over 2 years to make sure that our democracy will be ready and resilient. And our work here in Massachusetts includes training people to be neutral, nonpartisan poll monitors. And so we partner with election officials who are there to make sure that people are able to vote. But we fan out across the Commonwealth, and we'll be making sure that people are able to exercise their right to vote, and we sure hope they get out and exercise that.
So who are these poll monitors, and what makes them an important piece of the electoral process?
So these are people who are volunteers, and the ACLU works as part of the Massachusetts Election Voter Coalition. So there's a lot of other groups included, Mass Vote and Common Cause and other groups as well. And together we have sought volunteers. Our action team has volunteers, and we've trained people, and they'll be identified wearing vests so people know that they're not actually government officials and they're not with either party, and they're there to help to make sure not only that people can vote, but that the poll workers, the people who are there as actual workers, that they're safe too, because their safety is integral to making sure that we have a free and fair voting day.
What does intimidation at the polls look like?
Well, it could be people who are blocking your way. It could be people who are wearing particular clothing that are in the polling area, because you're not allowed to do that, and trying to intimidate people. It could be people who are, making it feel like unsafe to be there. So those are the kinds of things that our poll monitors are looking for, or trying to intimidate a poll worker, obviously.
Asking for your ID.
Right, asking for an ID, saying that you have to have the ID. So there's all these different ways that people can be intimidated from exercising their right to vote, and knowing what their rights are is another part of our action plan. And if your viewers are interested, they can go to the ACLUM, that's ACLUM, like Massachusetts.org website, and they can get to know what are your rights at the polls, what are the things people can require, for example, not IDs, so that they can go out and really know your rights and feel empowered to be part of our democracy.
People think that, this kind of voter intimidation can't happen in Massachusetts. It happens every place else, but it can't happen here.
Yeah.
Does it happen here? And what are some of the voter protections in place in our state?
Right. So there are efforts to intimidate people here. There have already been some proposals, even in this election season, to say, for example, there should be voter ID requirements, which are obviously antithetical to being able to exercise your right to vote. But there have also been threats against election officials, even here in Massachusetts. We think we're immune, but we're really not. And so it's so important that people understand that a democracy is only as strong as those that, that exercise it. So democracy is a muscle, and the more you flex it, the stronger it becomes. And so the more all of us get involved, exercising our right to vote, getting involved, joining groups like the ACLU or other groups who are training people to be involved, and it doesn't stop on Election Day. Our work goes on, and we're really encouraging people to get involved, not only in the national elections, but in your school board races, in your town hall and city council meetings. meetings, things like that. There's so many ways for us to get involved, and for those of us who care so much about democracy, getting involved is perhaps the most patriotic thing that we can do.
It's our responsibility as
It
a
is.
citizen. So we talked about IDs. What are the laws? What are they around showing proof of eligibility to vote? Are there circumstances where someone has to show identification in Massachusetts?
If you go in on election day itself and you're not yet registered and you're trying to do same-day voter registration, we don't yet have that. But what you can do is possibly cast a provisional ballot. And in those circumstances, listen to what the poll workers, the official poll workers, tell you to do. But for the most part, there is no voter ID requirement as such in Massachusetts, and nor should there be. We're trying to lower the barriers to voting, not trying to increase them. So it's really important that people understand that you have a right to vote. You should vote and go out and show up at the polls on election day.
We talked in our first segment about the suppression of voters of color and also how local issues such as our state ballot questions are of particular importance
Absolutely.
to communities of color. But we know in some towns and cities across the Commonwealth, turnout among voters of color has been low.
That's right.
What work has the ACLU of Mass done to address this?
Great, so that's another pillar of our election action plan, and we're calling it BIPOC to the ballot box, right? Getting people who are, Black, Indigenous, people of color to actually get engaged in their democracy. And there are so many reasons that people don't vote. It could be that they don't think their vote matters or their vote counts. They don't know how. There's all sorts of reasons. So actually, over the last 2 years, the ACLU has been working with community partners in a number of communities, and that includes, let's see, Brockton, Pittsfield, Springfield, Worcester, and Lawrence so far, and we're hoping to expand it. And we're actually going door to door. We've talked to thousands of people, and we're actually asking them, how come you're not registered to vote? Why wouldn't you vote? And of course, the most common reason, each one is individual, but the most common reason is they don't think their vote matters. But I'll tell you what, in Brockton last year, for the first time ever, a woman from of Dominican descent was elected to the school board by just 3 votes.
Wow.
Just 3 votes. So your vote really matters. And that's particularly true in these local elections. And that's where our democracy really needs people to participate, because that's where your voice really makes a difference and where your vote really makes a difference. So BIPOC to the ballot box is a core tenet of the ACLU of Massachusetts Election Action Plan.
And as you said, this work has been ongoing.
And it will continue after Election Day. So people can go to the website, aclum.org, and sign up to be part of our action team. And that's going to be going whatever happens on Election Day.
All right. Now, the outcome of this national election is going to have an impact on certain civil rights. What are a few of those rights, and what will you be doing post-election to ensure those rights are upheld?
That's exactly right. So, I mean, right now we know that there are threats to our right to vote. There are threats to people who are undocumented, most of whom, almost all of whom, live in mixed families, mixed status families. There are threats to undermine the rights of people of color. Already they've been trying to strip away things like affirmative action and things like that. There are threats to reproductive health care and to our bodily autonomy. There are threats to LGBT community. And so we're seeing these amazing threats that we're facing. And no matter who takes the White House, those threats are still going to remain. Those political movements are still going to be out there. So the ACLU has been engaged in doing a couple things. One is making sure people know their rights. And so if you know your rights, there's power in that. You should know what the limits are of your right. What do you do, for example, if you're stopped by a police officer?
Yes.
What are your rights in those contexts? What are your rights if you need to seek health care?
And there are lots of numbers to call if you need assistance from the ACLU or if you feel threatened at the polls, right? And I think we have these numbers up on our screen, and we'll put them up on our website. Carol Rose, thank you for doing this work for us on our behalf. Carol Rose, Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts. As we close out the election season, take a closer look at the news you see with a critical eye. Be informed, not misled. The News Literacy Project is a nonpartisan, nonprofit movement teaching news literacy skills. Check out WCVB.com for more information, tools, and training. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram. Follow me on X at Karen Holmes Ward, and you can watch the show on a very local app. It's free to download on your phone, tablet, or smart TV. Go out and vote.